Making headlines this hour. Minister of Tourism and Environment Tariq Ibrahim and the United States Ambassador to the Maldives Hugo Yon convenes for high-level discussions aimed at strengthening bilateral cooperation in the environmental sector. The Ministry of Finance and Planning figures shows the state budget expenditure as of July 17 compared to the same period last year declined by 17.9%, while state revenue increase has taken the budget surplus over to $64 million so far this year. And the High Commissioner of Maldives to Sri Lanka, Masood Imad, reveals the government of Sri Lanka has plans to facilitate long-term land lease for Maldivian investors. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to PSM News in English with me, Abdullah Ahil. Now the news in detail. Minister of Tourism and Environment Tariq Ibrahim and the United States Ambassador to the Maldives Hugo Yon convenes for high-level discussions aimed at strengthening bilateral cooperation in the environmental sector, with particular attention given to investment in clean energy initiatives. The meeting between Tourism and Environment Minister Tariq Ibrahim and U.S. Ambassador was hosted at the Environment Ministry in Male. Central to their exchange were proposals to expedite foreign investment in environmentally sustainable energy generation, notably in solar and other renewable technologies. This dialogue underscored both governments' commitment to deepening diplomatic ties through environmental collaboration. Minister Tariq and Ambassador Yan also examined the prospect of U.S. assistance to support the Maldives' efforts in addressing acute ecological challenges, especially those tied to energy transition and climate resilience. Clean energy emerged as a defining theme, with solar power development identified as a principal area of shared interest. Ministry officials described the talks as a pivotal step toward advancing strategic cooperation and encouraging joint responses to environmental vulnerabilities that continue to threaten small island nations. Within this context, the administration of President Dr. Mohamed Muiz has been advancing a broad portfolio of environmental initiatives, many designed to reconfigure the national energy infrastructure in favor of low-carbon alternatives. Among these is the landmark Solar City initiative, which President Muiz designated as the country's inaugural Special Economic Zone or SEZ project during a state visit to Singapore in July. The program has now entered its implementation phase, backed by contractual arrangements for the development of a 100-megawatt floating solar photovoltaic or PV system. The Ministry of Finance and Planning figures shows the state budget expenditure as of July 17 compared to the same period last year declined by 17.9%, while state revenue increase has taken the budget surplus to over $64 million so far this year. According to the ministry's weekly fiscal development report, released state expenditure amounted to $1.3 billion as of the 17th of July, which is down 17.9% from the $1.5 billion spent during the same period last year. Recurrent expenditure topped total expenditure with $1.1 billion but remained 3.5% lower than the figure in 2024. Out of the total recurrent expenditure, $460.4 million was spent on salaries and pensions, while $642 million was on administrative expenses. Structured capital spending by this government has brought capital expenditure down by 61.4% from last year, $149.2 million compared to $382.6 million recorded during the same period last year. In addition to slashing expenditure, the government's ongoing fiscal reform efforts have boosted state revenue, with the revenue and grants as of the 17th of July reported at $1.3 billion, which is 7.9% more than the $1.2 billion earned during the same period in 2024. The High Commissioner of Maldives to Sri Lanka, Masood Imad, reveals the government of Sri Lanka has plans to facilitate a long-term land lease for Maldivian investors. Speaking to PSM News Raj Jamir, the program, on the recently concluded three-day official visit of the President of Sri Lanka, Anura Kumara Dissanayaka, to the Maldives, High Commissioner Masood said the historic visit has further strengthened relations between the two countries and opened up more opportunities for Maldivians. He said on top of the two bilateral agreements signed between Maldives and Sri Lanka during President Dissanayaka's visit, another 27 MOUs are under deliberations. President Dissanayaka, during the last of the visit, had attended the Sri Lanka-Maldives Business Forum aimed to invite the Maldivian business community to invest in Sri Lanka by showcasing the country's high potential in sectors such as investment, trade and tourism. Though there are only a few Maldivian investments in Sri Lanka at present, Masood revealed that Sri Lanka wants to provide favorable opportunities for Maldivian investors to increase investments. He said the Sri Lankan government is ready to facilitate long-term land lease for Maldivian investors, adding that the High Commission will continue to provide assistance to locals wishing to do business in Sri Lanka. President Dissanayaka's visit came around a day after the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, concluded his official visit to the island nation. Reflecting on the visit, Joint Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Dr. Ibrahim Zuhuri, said the primary focus of Prime Minister Modi's visit was on economic cooperation. In addition to discussions on a free trade agreement between Maldives and India, Dr. Zuhuri pointed out that the $565 million line of credit agreement signed during the visit. President Dr. Mohamed Muiz has described the visits of the leaders of Maldives' closest neighbors as a stepping stone towards enhancing strategic partnerships and closer collaboration with India and Sri Lanka. The Ministry of Divehi Language, Culture and Heritage holds discussions with the Road Development Corporation Limited to explore ways to preserve and economize the heritage sites at Borutiludum Mati. Borutiludum Mati, consisting of Ha Alif, Ha Dal and Shaviani atolls, is home to several key national heritage sites linked to national hero Sultan Muhammad Takrafan, which holds immense historical and national significance. President Dr. Mohamed Muiz, since assuming office, has prioritized diversifying the tourism industry, with cultural tourism a pivotal part of the plan. The ministry has devised a plan to preserve the heritage sites in Borutiludum Mati and introduce cultural tourism to the region. The Minister of Divehi Language, Culture and Heritage, Adam Nasir Ibrahim, has visited the islands in Borutiludum Mati to gather the necessary information to kickstart the landmark project. According to the ministry, there are about 400 heritage sites in Maldives, with hundreds more estimated to be buried underground. Effective from today, the 1st of August, patients seeking medical treatment abroad will have access to more dollars at the official bank rate. President Dr. Mohamed Muiz on the 21st of July has announced that starting from the 1st of August, patients seeking medical treatment abroad under the National Social Protection Agency will be able to purchase up to $2,000 at the official bank rate, while those funding their own medical treatment abroad will also be eligible to purchase up to $1,000 at bank rate. Currently, patients traveling abroad under the Asanda scheme can purchase up to $2,000 at the bank rate, while other travelers, including those going overseas for medical purposes at their own expenses, are limited to $500 issued for each ticket. The president's decision was designed to ease the difficulties faced by those traveling abroad for medical treatment in obtaining dollars. The government is making arrangements for easy access to dollars for Maldivians traveling and studying abroad. Local students studying abroad has now been allocated an increased withdrawal limit of up to $1,200 per month, while Hajj pilgrims have access to a limit of $1,750. According to the latest figures shared by NSPA, more than $1.6 million was spent by the agency on medical expenses in June this year. Of this, NSPA spent $525,290 for medical treatment abroad and $1.14 million on domestic healthcare services. Housing Development Corporation gears up to move forward with the plan to develop Farokolofushi as a park under the recently unveiled revised master plan for Hulumale. The plan from HDC is designed to provide a much-needed green and recreational space for the ever-increasing population of Hulumale Phase 2. The new inclusive green space, Farokolofushi Park, designed to promote wellness, recreation and community connection for the growing community in Hulumale, is a key component of the new master plan. Forokolfushi was previously operated as a resort until it was connected to Hulumale Phase 2 in 2016. HTC says that the park will feature an array of recreational activities, including an outdoor gym, football pitch, and various other sports facilities, along with a barbecue area, food vendors, and other activities designed to serve as a community hub. The population of Hulumale Phase 2 has increased significantly in the past 5 years and is expected to rise further with the 4,000 housing units currently under development nearly ready for residents to move in. This project has been designed to be the linchpin of the entire plan to develop more green spaces and recreational facilities in Hulumale Phase 2 under the revised master plan. The Maldives Transport and Contracting Company reports a net profit of $1.81 million for the second quarter of the year, marking a decisive recovery from the loss recorded in the preceding quarter. The rebound was attributed to sustained momentum in the country's construction and land reclamation division. The company's financial disclosure noted total income of $31.79 million, reflecting a 17.7% increase over the $27.12 million posted in the first quarter. That growth in revenue underpinned the broader improvement in profitability. Gross profit rose to $4.72 million, with operating profit reaching $3.22 million, a reversal from the first quarter operating loss of $84,280.52. After accounting for taxes, net profit was recorded at $1.8 million, in sharp contrast to the $1.27 million deficit from the earlier period. Revenue generation was led by MTCC's construction and land reclamation segment, which accounted for $32.34 million during the quarter. The company remained actively engaged across 313 projects, 9 reached completion, and 64 new initiatives commenced. European stocks hit a 3-week low at the end of a busy week as investors worries about the impact of fresh U.S. levies on dozens of countries, including a 39% rate on Switzerland. On the day, healthcare stocks dropped 1.3% after U.S. President Donald Trump sent letters to the leaders of 17 major pharmaceutical companies, including Novo Nordisk and Sanofi, outlining how they should slash U.S. prescription drug prices. Novo Nordisk shed 4.2%, falling to an almost 3-year low, while Sanofi shed 1%. The Pan-European Stock 600 index fell almost 1%, down for the third straight session and on track to end the week in red. The benchmark index has slipped 4.4% from its Monday peak when it came within 1.8% of its March all-time high, dragged down by a record plunge in Novo Nordisk shares following a profit warning and as investors assessed the implications of the US-EU trade deal. The United Arab Emirates conducts more aid airdrops on Gaza. The UAE announced that across 5 consecutive days it has conducted 58 aid airdrops, which included 3,787 tons of food and humanitarian supplies. The statement added that on the 31st of July, 41 Emirati aid trucks entered the Gaza Strip, including 12 that were carrying medical supplies to the World Health Organization. Gaza's food stocks have been running out since the recent Israeli aggression began, cutting off all supplies to the territory in March this year. That blockade was lifted in May, but with restrictions that Israel says are needed to prevent aid being diverted to militant groups. As stocks ran out, the situation escalated in June and July, with the World Health Organization warning of mass starvation and images of emaciated children shocking the world. The Gaza Health Ministry says 151 people, including 89 children, have died of malnutrition, most in recent weeks. A global hunger monitor said on the 29th of July that a famine scenario is unfolding. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee travels to Gaza to inspect the U.S. and Israel-backed aid distribution system as starvation worsens across the enclave. The visit took place as Witkoff works on a final plan to speed up deliveries to Gaza, the White House said on the 31st of July. A global hunger monitor said that a famine scenario was unfolding in the Gaza Strip, with malnutrition soaring, children under 5 dying of hunger-related causes, and humanitarian access severely restricted. The UN estimates that Israeli forces have killed more than 1,000 people seeking food since May, most near militarized distribution sites of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which employs a U.S. logistics firm run by a former CIA officer and armed U.S. veterans. The GHF denies that there have been deadly incidents at its sites and says the deadliest have been near other aid convoys. World Soccer governing body FIFA conducts the first of 3 planned talent identification camps for the Afghan women's refugee team in Sydney. The Afghan refugee team, whose creation was approved by FIFA in May, will be coached by former Scotland and Celtic forward Pauline Hamill. Hamill is set to announce a 23-player squad after the camps, with the team then taking part in FIFA-approved friendlies later this year. Since the Taliban returned to power in 2021, it has clamped down on the rights of women and girls, restricting their access to education and work, curbing their freedom of movement, and forcing them to cover their faces and bodies.
I mean, I think when you speak to the girls, you can get some kind of understanding of, what they've come through to come to this point, and I think that's always going to be a part of who they are. I think we're here to really focus on football, and really football is the tool to try to connect these players. They're already in communities, and they're already in really safe and secure and positive environments where they are, and I guess it's about trying to ensure that for the future that we continue with that. The players understand they're here for football reasons, but also they'll get support after these camps, moving forward to try and help them with whatever the next steps are for them.
Many players from the Afghanistan women's team fled the country at the time for fear of persecution. The women's team has since been unable to compete internationally as FIFA rules require recognition by a national federation, with the Taliban-controlled Afghan Football Federation banning women's sports. Residents of Montmartre in Paris sounded the alarm due to over-tourism, fearing their picturesque hilltop neighborhood could become the next Barcelona or Venice as tourist numbers spike following last year's Olympic Games. While Paris has so far avoided the large-scale protests seen in Spain and Italy, some of its most iconic areas are starting to feel the strain. Stringent housing regulations and the city's size have helped, but locals who live on the cobbled streets of Montmartre say change is urgently needed. Anne Renaudy, who has lived in the area for 29 years and heads the Vivre et Montmartre Association, said the historic quarter made famous by the 2001 film Emily and more recently the Netflix series Emily in Paris now resembles a theme park. Tourism in the Paris region reached 48.7 million visitors in 2024, with about 11 million visiting Montmartre annually, largely to see the photogenic Sacré-Cœur Basilica. The narrow streets have become clogged with tour groups, leaving locals frustrated, and things may only get busier. Paris officials say 2025 is shaping up to be a bumper tourist year, with a 20% rise in January bookings over the same month last year. Real estate prices in Montmartre have risen 19% over the past decade, according to website MeulerAgents.com. A 40-square-meter apartment near Place du Tertre can now fetch around 500,000 euros. The 18th arrondissement also has the most number of Airbnb announcements out of Paris's 20 districts, according to urban planning site Appur. Paris has tightened short-term rental rules, reducing the annual limit on renting out a primary residence from 120 to 90 days. Even small things like the cost of a scoop of ice cream, which can set you back €5, reflect the shift from neighborhood to tourist zone. And that's all the news we have for today. We'll be back with any further updates. Until then, I'm Abdullah Ahil from PSM News.